The speaker is approaching 5:30, and that will be way beyond, like it's almost an hour now. Can we have a guidance on this matter, because it is extremely important that we conclude on that business today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Eddie, you have concluded. I have protected Eddie. Can I talk? As per the standing orders, I have asked you. I will not tell you. Sergeant at Arms, get Senator Sifuna out of this house. Get out. Sifuna, you are rubbish yourself. Get out. He called me rubbish.
Point of order. You guys are destroying the Senate. How do you take this point from being given? No. Wacha nikuulize. Give me a chance.
Senators. Order, senators. Order, senators. Order, senators. Eddie. Senator Ongeni, what's your point of order?
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, and my colleagues, honorable senators, you know, we can have differences here, but I plead with all of us that we try and have dignity. You know, the problem with what's happening nowadays is that with WhatsApp, whatever we are doing here could easily find its way out there. And you know, once information goes out there, this house is going to be equated with some, I don't know, MCA somewhere. You know, we can always differ. And we want a house that is exciting, a house that is interesting, a house where we can challenge each other. But let's always remember that people are watching. I mean, even when things were so bad, Senator Halwale, during the Second World War, Roosevelt was able to sit down with Stalin, and they discussed and they came up with the UN, the League of Nations, that is there up to today. So let's agree on the rules of the game, the ground rules. When a speaker is on the chair, I plead. When the speaker is on the chair, I plead. Let us give him respect, because he's the one who guides deliberation, who moderates debate. Please. You know, the shouting across is okay, but I plead,
Senator, be heard in silence, please.
I plead, please, so that for posterity, Senator Cheragay, for posterity, we retain the dignity of this house. We have, Mr. Speaker, we have had senators who have argued their points with passion. I saw Senator, now CS, Murkomen, taking one senior council Rengo. But he was doing it within the rules. You know, he was doing it within the rules. And that's how it should be. I plead with us, even when we have differences, let us retain the dignity of this house. I plead with you, please, Mr. Speaker. I plead, Mr. Speaker, that in all our emotions, let us maintain the dignity of the house. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What's your point of order, Majority Leader?
10 seconds. Just for 10 seconds, two things that I want to say. I agree with everything Senator Omogeni has said. The only thing I want to humbly plead, Mr. Speaker, we can exchange with Senator Haji as much as we want. He's my contemporary, he's my age mate, he's my friend. If I say, for example, things that he doesn't like, and I agree with Senator Omogeni that we be guided in what we say, that is between us as colleagues. The minute we begin, I have been in this house for sure, Mr. Speaker, even in the worst of times when we never used to greet each other as colleagues, there is no time that a senator used to insult the Speaker. That is the truth. You cannot run away. And Minority Leader, I want to plead with you, my brother. Teach Senator Sifuna how to behave in Parliament. This is not the only time he has abused the Speaker. He has also equally abused the substantive Speaker. That is not right. We can exchange as colleagues, that's fine. How many times does me and you trade things that we don't like, but we'll go outside and share a cup of tea? That is normal. It's part of parliamentary practice. But the habit of insulting the Speaker, we should not encourage. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, Senator Omogeni said something that I agree with. And I want it to go on record to the people running Parliamentary Budget Office. Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit, PBU. They are the ones who share some of these clips, the things that Senator Omogeni is saying. Because nobody else has access to these clips. So I want to humbly plead with the clerk's table that is here, if there are certain things, you know, the reason why, and I was in PSC when we made the decision to allow PBU to be our own internal unit, because when we previously used to allow media to be the ones, they'd focus on non-issues. They'll beam on a senator sleeping or a slip of a tongue by the senator. So we said, let's have our own professional broadcasting unit that is within Parliament. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, every time nowadays when there are exchanges, the following day you will see the same clips being relayed, yet the broadcasting belongs to this particular house. So I want to humbly plead with Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit. I have forgotten the name of the head, but the reason why we kept PBU inside the House of Parliament is that so that you focus on the core business, not to be sharing clips sometimes of members in unfortunate exchanges that are not helpful to Kenyans. So I don't expect the clip that has been seen, for example, today between members, one or two things saying to each other, to be found outside there. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minority Leader.
Asante Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, nataka kukubaliana na ndugu yangu Aaron alivyosema 100% kwamba yuko sawa. Na mimi leo Bwana Spika, ningependa uwe na moyo mkunjufu, moyo mkubwa kama spika wetu. Ninaelewa ya kwamba ule tulivyofanya hapa, yale maneno yote tuliyofanya hapa, si ya usawa kulinganishana na wewe ukiwa umeketi kwenye kiti. Bwana Spika, mengi ndugu wakiketi ama katika hafla yetu kama hii ya senators kuwa katika mjadala, ni lazima sengine tutakosoana mdomo. Kwa hiyo kama imefanyika ni bahati mbaya, hatukutarajia kwamba itafika hapo. Kwa hiyo Bwana Spika, kitu tunataka kusema kwa ndugu zangu ni kwamba leo tumeikosea hii nyumba. Huo ndio ukweli wa mambo. Sote upande ule upande huu tumekosea. Tumekosa. Na lazima tukubaliane ya kwamba maneno yaliyopelekwa pande ile na pande ile, mengine mimi siwezi kutamka kwa sababu ya vile ninavyofikiria kwamba ikiwa wale wako nyumbani na wale wanafunzi ambao wanakuja hapa wanaona mtu kama Boni Halwale, wanamuona Mazayo, wanaona Aaron Cheriot, wanaona kijana mshupavu wakili, tukiwa tunapeana maneno kama hayo, Bwana Spika, yote piga moyo konde, yaweke nyuma, na najua katika ile hasira ukiwa kama kinara katika hii nyumba, najua utaweza kutoa uamuzi. Kama vile katika ile hasira iliyokuja kwa ghafla, na wewe ni binadamu pia. Hakuna mtu anaweza kukuita hivyo na wewe usimuite. Kwa hiyo yeye akiwa ameenda kidogo pande ambao umezidi, mimi ningeomba hiyo, hata ile pengine vile ulivyotamka, pengine useme okay, ilikuwa katika ile spur of a moment, lakini yote hao tuliyofanya, mimi nasema tuyaweke nyuma, tugange yale na ukuja. Kwa ndugu zangu, mimi naweza sema kwa pande zote mbili, lazima tuonyeshe mfano. Kila siku watu wanakuja hapa wakituona, wanaoketi pale, wanaoangalia ndani ya nyumba kwa runinga, wanaoangalia katika mahall makubwa makubwa. Sisi kama mfano, please, I plead with you, let's use good language, let's use parliamentary language, so that we can at least save this house. We are bado tunaendelea, hata pole natumia lugha mbili, lakini tunaendelea kudidimia chini kiheshima. Ningesema sote tuwe kitu kimoja, ili tuweke heshima ya nyumba hii ya Senate, kwa sababu sio sisi peke yake wa mwisho kukaa hapa ndani. Vizazi na vizazi vitakuja kukaa hapa, na lazima tuweke msingi wa heshima nzuri tunaopeana katika hii nyumba yetu ya Senate. Asante Bwana Speaker.
Senator Boni Khalwale.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise on standing order number 123 to move the following motion. That Senator Sifuna Watenya be suspended from the service of the Senate. Mr. Speaker, this is a standing order that was grafted to speak to what we have witnessed today. And Mr. Speaker, because this motion doesn't require substantiation, Mr. Speaker, allow me to say one thing in the footsteps of the Senator of Nyamira. Senators who are shouting at me, I respect you, and I cannot expect you to respect me. But let me tell you, amongst you are lawyers. I am the only member of parliament in the Republic of Kenya who has been decorated by the Law Society of Kenya. I've been awarded the highest award of respect, the Father Kaiser Award. I have been decorated, Mr. Speaker, by the International Federation of Women Lawyers, FIDA. Mr. Speaker, I want to appeal, without naming names, to the young senators I'm seeing in the House, including Okech, including Sifuna, including Ladema, to make time and swallow your pride and learn from us. It is not by accident that we have this number of years behind us in experience. It's not by design, by accident, Mr. Speaker, that we have this many years of traversing the globe. Mr. Speaker, if you do not apply standing order number 123 through my motion, we will have lost this house. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sorry, Mr. Speaker, before you give the Honorable Ladama on his standing order, I request Senator Kinyua, the Commissioner, to second my motion that Senator Sifuna.
One moment. Senator Olekina, what's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to beseech my colleagues. Mr. Speaker, I would like to beseech my colleagues that we are mature men and women in this House. A few weeks ago, I mentioned to the majority leader that if these things proceed the way they are proceeding, he himself is losing this House. Mr. Speaker, I have sat here and I've been very, very calm today. I've listened and I've listened to the majority whip. The majority whip has constantly used unparliamentary language. Mr. Speaker, the majority whip has also tried to rewrite our standing orders by standing and saying, I am moving a motion under standing order number 123. Mr. Speaker, we have to give respect. And I've listened to the majority whip saying that the young senators, please learn from our wisdom. But my question that I want to ask is that, does that learning also equate to rewriting standing orders that are not in existence? Mr. Speaker, you know, I don't want us to get into a point where we are now directing the chair. But I want to follow the words of wisdom of Senator Madzayo. I want to beseech you, Mr. Speaker, that with all these emotions, I want to take full responsibility for what has happened on our side and request us to maintain decorum in this House. That is the only time that will be seen as being different. This shouting back and forth is not going to help us. Yes, we are all human beings. We are people who lose our cool at any given time. But Mr. Speaker, being directed, and I know maybe what my colleague said may not be parliamentary, but having a situation where the chair and a senator exchange words, it really beats the purposes why we should be in this House in the first place. So, Mr. Speaker, and I hope, Mr. Speaker, you can give me an ear. Minority Leader, can you please allow the Speaker to hear? Senator Madzayo. Senator Madzayo, please. Senator Madzayo. Senator Madzayo, please. Mr. Speaker, just give me your ear for 3 minutes. Yeah, because I've been interrupted. The minority leader has been talking to you. I want to beseech you. I want to beseech you, Mr. Speaker. I want to beseech you, Mr. Speaker, not to let the actions of a spur of a moment dictate how you're going to deal with this matter. You've been invited by the majority side through a very unprocedural way to effect standing order number 123. My plea to you as a colleague is that you let the bygones be bygones. Let us learn from our mistakes and let us find a way that we can be able to cool down these temperatures. We all need each other. And any given time when a senator is not seated here because of spur of the moment actions, the people that he or she represents end up suffering. So, Mr. Speaker, today, the whole day, I mean, it's 5:32. You know, we are still waiting for the Speaker to come back. But the whole day, really, we have not discussed. There was a motion, I know, of Kenyans who are still seeking compensation from the bomb of 1998. We have issues of electricity. Senator Chute discussed that issue. But do you really want to tell me, and this is to all of you, my colleagues, do you want to tell me that we'll reduce the 2.5 hours that we have in the Senate to be a time when we can just be bickering and hurling insults and calling each other's names? I am really, really disappointed. I'm ashamed of this House today. I'm really ashamed of this House. And I want to request my colleagues, please, let us act our age. Today we are not acting our age. Today we are insulting each other back and forth. You know, it is not helping us. I said I take full responsibility on what happened on our side. And I want to request you, Mr. Speaker, to let it bygone. They are highly regretted. And the only way we can remain as one house, Mr. Speaker, is when we learn to tolerate one another. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator, I am following an order on the screen. Senator Cherargei, what's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, I think Senator Ledama should listen, because he was also imploring to have Mr. Speaker, sound standing order number 1 and looking the motion that Senator Boni Khalwale has brought under section 123. Mr. Speaker, what happens is that I only beg of you, Speaker, with all humility, it is that at that moment, the Senator Sifuna should have been invited to apologize and withdraw, which did not happen. Speaker, looking at the emotions and agreeing that this thing has generated, Mr. Speaker, and we know also you are a human being. We know you have powers of standing order number 1. We don't want to take to the House to the extreme end, Mr. Speaker, but in as much as Senator Ledama pleads with you to let bygones bygone, then, Mr. Speaker, there should some level of remorse, so that even as you take a decision whether to dispense off with Senator Boni Khalwale's motion as per section 123, Mr. Speaker. No, I'm just you allow me to finish. I'm in fact in line with what you are saying. No, it is. Let me invite you, Senator Eddie, and you know you are my friend. Article section 120, senior counsel. Can you do your job? You did it well when I was in remand. Can you please continue? Understanding order number 123 is that, Mr. Speaker, and standing order number 1, I know, Mr. Speaker, we are also human. There might have been that altercation, but looking at the unity of the House, and Mr. Speaker, I've seen you have invited that for Kamukunji tomorrow. These are some of the things we can discuss in camera. We are a one House, Mr. Speaker. I know the motion of standing order 123 is too harsh, Mr. Speaker. I know the standard procedure of the House, Mr. Speaker, should have to invite Senator Sifuna to withdraw and apologize, which was not done, Mr. Speaker. I think because of the emotions, Mr. Speaker, the standard should have been, Mr. Speaker, I know you are consulting the House leadership, the 2 wise men, Mr. Speaker, the 2 wise men. Okay. Mr. Speaker, I wanted you to listen to this because you are also human. And I agree with the wisdom of both majority and minority leader. I know this is something we can agree, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the standard procedure would have been that Senator Sifuna, and I'm not playing devil's advocate, should have been given a chance to withdraw and apologize, which did not happen because, of course, we understand you are human and the House was degenerating, Mr. Speaker. That should have been the procedure. Number 2, even if we were to agree with the minority side, there should be some level of remorse, because you are also human, Mr. Speaker. They should have been able of remorse, so that we invite you to invoke under starting order number 1. Finally, Mr. Speaker, looking at the motion that my brother Senator Boni Khalwale, the bullfighter, has come up with, Mr. Speaker, I think at this point it is too harsh, in my own opinion, because we are one House. We want to work together as a House of Union so that we can move forward, Mr. Speaker. So that, Mr. Speaker, can you protect me from the Senate Majority Leader, Mr. Speaker?
Conclude, please, Senator.
Yeah, Majority Leader, Senate Majority Leader, Mr. Speaker, protect him from and also Commissioner of PSC. You know, Mr. Speaker, the chairperson, the Commissioner of PSC is happy. He has been allocated 40 billion for Parliament. So, Mr. Speaker, what I'm just portraying in conclusion, in my own opinion, I know an excuse of ignorance of the law is no excuse, but looking at the unity where we want to go as a Senate, coming together, the House of Union, Mr. Speaker, let us also, Mr. Speaker, you can sue your wisdom, understanding order number 1, but I can in fact, Mr. Speaker, because the House is becoming imechemuka, ground imechemuka, maybe tomorrow, Mr. Speaker, during the Kamukunji at around 10, I think 10 a.m., These are things we can discuss in camera, because, Mr. Speaker, we don't want to generate where you are insulting the Speaker. Mr. Speaker, please, those are my humble submissions. Let us move forward as a one house. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Wambua.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I will go straight to respond to the motion that was moved by Senator Alwale. And he knows it. He is the father of this book. We should be learning from him. The Speaker, clearly and outrightly, he can't do what he has done. He has purported to have done. Standing Order 123. It begins with naming a senator. It is after the senator has been named by the Speaker, not by a member. The member will request the Speaker to name a member. It is after the Speaker has named a member that then the other processes will follow. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, I have only added today that you can name or purport to move a motion under 123 after the senator has already been kicked out by the Speaker. So then we put ourselves in a situation that we don't know what to do. Do we recall the member? What happens? The Speaker, that be as it may, before the senator for Kakamega, a man we truly respect, moved that motion, Mr. Speaker, there was bitter exchange. I saw the senator for Kakamega exchange with the senator for Nairobi. I saw my colleagues here, including myself, exchange with colleagues on the other side. So now, if we were to go that route, I don't know who will be left in this house, Mr. Speaker. There will be no house, Mr. Speaker. There will be no house today, Mr. Speaker. To respect to that chair, greatest respect to that chair and to yourself, Mr. Speaker. I saw you exchange one-on-one with a member and call each other names, Mr. Speaker. I saw that with my eyes today. Mr. Speaker, we have a Senate, and I'll keep saying this. We have a Senate to take care of. And I say that to all of us, including myself. We have a Senate to take care of. Mr. Speaker, what has happened today, I hope it will never happen again. Senator Kiambu and Majority Leader, it's okay, we have said it before. We would say it as many times as we have to say it until we restore order in this House. Mr. Speaker, with those many remarks, I see the Majority Leader is beckoning you to do something. These days it is what it is, Mr. Speaker. It is what it is. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Sigay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We will only restore the dignity of this House when we take responsibility of our actions. We will be able to be a sober House when we are responsible, even before we take the mic to speak to anything that we are dealing with in the House. Mr. Speaker, I've watched this afternoon the proceedings. I have listened to my colleagues. It is not lost in any of us that we can all afford to speak. But what are we speaking to? What are we speaking about? Senate has all along been seen to be a house of sobriety, a house where decorum is exhibited by the members. But today, Mr. Speaker, that was not the case. The exchanges among the members is making it worse by the extent of what I'm listening to from my colleagues from the minority side. It it might be that the exchanges went beyond what is expected. Who takes responsibility? Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Senator Boni Halwale has moved a motion under Standing Order 123. As to whether or not a member ought to have been named prior to that, you have been asked to enforce the rules of the House. How do we then enforce the rules of the House when members are saying we are not taking responsibility for our actions? Mr. Speaker, it is not the best experience that we have had in this House today. It is not an excuse to say it's the heat of the moment. I believe in taking responsibility myself. I want to beseech members of this House to also sit back, search themselves, think through what has happened in this House so that we restore the House of the Senate where it belongs. If we do not, we are going to lose the status of this House. We are going to lose this House. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mgeni.
Mr. Speaker, I would have liked to make my contributions when Senator Halwale is in the House, but I can proceed. Mr. Speaker, I've already made my views on what happened this afternoon, which is regrettable. And we all know, Mr. Speaker, that before there is calm, there is always a storm. You know, there is always a storm. And the way Majority Leader is beckoning to me, when a flight is taking off, there's always turbulence. You always have turbulence. But Mr. Speaker, after turbulence, there will always be calm, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I don't know whether, that's why I wanted Senator Halwale to be here. I don't know whether in the history of Parliament, not the Senate, in the history of Parliament, I don't know whether there is any elected member who has stood up to invoke Article 123 against another member. Standing Order 123. In the history of Parliament, the Parliament of Kenya, I don't think there is any senator or any elected member of Parliament who has ever invoked that standing order against his colleague. So I want to ask Senator Halwale to reflect and be calm, Mr. Speaker, because, you know, we are setting precedents. And me, Mr. Speaker, I've gone 360 degrees in my professional career. The oppressed have come to me as a lawyer, and I've represented them. Those who are in power have also come to me to represent them. So when you are digging a hole, warn yourself that tomorrow you may enter the same hole. Mr. Speaker, if we set a precedent where we, as colleagues, want to, you know, let me use the word finish. We want to invoke standing orders to finish our colleagues. That is being over-emotional. These disagreements do happen. And for some of us who were in this Parliament last time, we saw them. I mentioned the way I used to see serious exchanges between Senator Orengo and the Senator Murkomen. But there is a way the Speaker would always guide the deliberations. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to appeal to Senator Halwale not to set a precedent where tomorrow, if I see Senator Cheragei, and I saw him a bit emotional some 3 months ago, if he becomes emotional, I invoke Standing Order 123. Because tomorrow we may not greet each other. We will now convert this house into a house of enemies. And that's not what we want to do. We have Muslims here, Mr. Speaker. We have people who are Christians here, Mr. Speaker. And we know, the Bible says, we have all sinned and fallen short of God's glory. That's what the Bible says. So I think the punishment that has been meted out on Senator Sifuna, as Senator Cheragei has put it this afternoon, he was not even warned And the standing orders dictate that before you eject him, you warn him first. If he persists, then you evict him. So already, Senator, please, already he has received punishment. That's enough. And we are trying to engage, we are trying to discuss, we want to restore calm and run our businesses. The way PLO Lumumba normally says, don't respond to a mosquito bite with a hammer. Don't go for an overkill. We will set a bad precedent because this is a house of record. You invoke it today against Senator Sifuna. I assure you, senators, tomorrow it will be you. The last parliament, Senator Cheriot, you can correct me. I think we only had one expulsion from the house. Only one. For a record of 5 years. Only Senator Malala was sent out for the remainder of the day. I think we have now done six expulsions. We are not doing so well. So since I think if you read standing order, I think number 122, you know, before you even call a senator, it says on the first occasion, you send him away for 3 sittings. If he becomes very disorderly on a second or subsequent occasion during the same session, you now take it up 7 days. Now if another time he again persists, then now we can invite Senator Halwale to invoke standing order 123. But I plead, you know, Senator Halwale is from Kakamega. Senator Sifuna is a senator of Nairobi, but he's his neighbor from Bungoma. Let's not be reactive. It's good to, you know, it's good to express our anger. That's okay. We are human. But let us also not overreact. So I urge you, Speaker, we have already apologized for what has happened this afternoon. Some of us are new in this house. We are learning. Accept, you're also human. I know how you feel when there are these exchanges. It's not good for you. But you are a son of a very respected elder, Senator, the late Mzee Yusuf, Haji. And you know, when we had serious disagreements here on, you remember revenue, we used to defer to him. He's the one who used to guide us and calm us, and he used to restore us. So, like father, like son, calm down, Mr. Speaker, sir. You have already punished the Senator Sifuna. We move on so that we become each other's keeper. Today it's me, tomorrow it will be you. I submit, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Senator, there seems to be a lot of interest on this matter. I will only allow 2 more speakers, one from the majority side and one from minority side. And they will only have 3 minutes. Please, can we have Senator Esther Anyeni?
Mr. Speaker, while I heed to the advice of some of the ranking members in this House, and of course also take the apology, I am disturbed by some few issues I would like to mention. Young legislators and new legislators in that matter have been mentioned widely. I believe I'm one of the young legislators who is very composed and rational in my way of operations in this House. But I do not like a situation where we can actually debate to an extent of saying that this is an illegitimate government, whereby a government that was elected by the people and IBC went ahead to declare. The same was challenged at the Supreme Court and no one had issues about that. And as honorable members, we can engage and insult colleagues to that extent. We are the same people who have been complaining about business issues in this House taking long to be addressed. And we keep on buying time in this kind of engagements. It's not the first time members are apologizing. If I remember the other time, Senator Kathuri Murungi was seated there, the same happened. He was actually pointed at. So we will not keep doing these similar actions and apologizing. That is going to be a culture. Senator Omogeni, I heed to your advice, but as a young legislator, I want to actually differ with that bit that yes, some of the ranking members or members who are elected with very many numbers of votes can still insult others and still get away with it in the name of apology. We really need to relook our ways of operations. I rarely speak during such times, but on this occasion I had to speak because young legislators cannot be bundled up together to be people who are on a learning curve and showing a matter of not having decorum, while some of us have actually been carrying ourselves with a high level of esteem and engagement to our colleagues. So while I also heed to the advice by the majority leader, Senator Aaron Cheruiyot, that we should actually rethink on how we are carrying ourselves in this house, I also want to say that it's not just about apologizing. People have repeatedly done this, and honorable members in that matter, and they apologize and people calm down, and the same continues. You know, we are even disputing matters that have been highlighted in national newspapers to be rumors.
Your time is up. Senator Eddy, I think, as the last speaker.
Mr. Speaker, it is almost 6 p.m. The House started at 2:30. This is a House that its composition is because of donated power to all of us by the people of Kenya. And I hope that, I'm glad that my brother Arun Cheruiyot is here, because ultimately the position that Arun Cheruiyot holds is established by the Constitution, among other leaders, including my minority leader here, Senator Mazayo. It's actually a very solemn day, because we are not transacting business that helps the people of Kenya. It is very sad that we can come to a house like this. In such a house, we are either sitting here with privilege or sitting here because of responsibility. Jomo Kenyatta, the founding father of this nation, in his book, Facing Mount Kenya, talks about responsibility. And he says that responsibility of nationhood will be given only to reliable custodians. I want to urge my brother Arun, as the leader of majority, and in extension my brother Senator Mazayo, whether if you cast your eyes in this house, do you feel like this house is becoming a reliable house to Kenyans to deal with issues that Kenyans want us to be dealing with every day? We are reducing ourselves as a house to constantly defending the position of our parties and our coalitions, and forgetting that we have been elected, and on the 15th of September last year, most of us paraded here with the help of the clerk of the house and took an oath that we were beyond election and we are starting to work for the people of Kenya. I want to urge us, I observed this house, and I know my brother Senator Boni Alwale thinks that some of us here are young, therefore naive, and we don't know what we're doing in this house. Some of us came to this house because we were motivated by the stature that this house had conferred upon this nation. The idea that when the presidency or the executive sometimes has challenges, or when the National Assembly sometimes has challenges, people like James Orengo, people like Murkomen, rose beyond party and coalition positions to stand for this nation. What we are seeing today in this house is completely unacceptable. And Mr. Speaker, I want to say that what Senator Sifuna said is regrettable and completely unacceptable. And in fact, having been here in a way that I observed all the chaos that was there, I'll be humble enough to say that I apologize if it's allowed on his behalf. It's not acceptable to not just engage with the chair, but to go ahead and have abusive language with the chair. But that said, there is a genesis for why emotions are rising high and high, and I want to request our leaders, please talk. Let us rise above these coalition positions and a lot of strategic, taking advantage of each other. Like the reason why even we found ourselves in that situation, Mr. Speaker, if you remember, I rose to raise an issue of the substantive speaker giving us assurance that he will be back in the House in 30 minutes to give a ruling over a matter that has held this House hostage for the last 3 weeks. It is now almost, I'm on a point of order, Mr. Thangwa, Senator Sangwa. It's now 6 p.m. Literally one and a half hours later, we haven't had the communication around this issue. So I just want to urge us as a House, we are going to kill the efforts that have been made by previous senators who are in this House, who raised the bar of this House, that this House became the place for solace and confidence and recourse for this nation. Let's try, majority, talk to minority, and you guys advise us how you want this House to run and how you want to elevate the stature of this House. Otherwise, the gains that has been made to make this House the upper house. People have gone to court from both sides of the House in the previous years to make this House be what it is. It is degenerating at a very sporadic speed, and it is important that majority leader takes note, and minority leader takes note that this House is no longer functional, and it's no longer serving the purpose of defending the people. With that, Mr. Speaker, I am remorseful about what has happened, and I hope that we can rise to be a united House that can stand for bigger agenda of this nation. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mazayo, I'll give you as the last speaker. Sorry, Manzo, Daniel Manzo.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I just want to have a look again at 123, and 123 originates from 122 and somehow puts a procedure. But Mr. Speaker, I would like to state under 123, finally, the power rests with you. Mr. Speaker, the standing orders assume that you already get a hearing, make an observation, and make a ruling by yourself. And finally, that particular power of dealing in any way under 123 purely rests on you, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to plead with you, having noticed that this House has degenerated in something else I did not expect. I've been a member of Parliament now for 12 years. I never saw a thing like this in the National Assembly. And of late, this House has grown into something outside this House, politics outside this House. And I think when we come to this House, we really want to remain and respect this House. Otherwise, I'm beginning to regret why I came to the Senate at all. If this is what I'm going to be doing here, and I was doing very well at the National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, I want to blame both sides of the House. It should not originate from that side, nor should it originate from this side. Mr. Speaker, I believe that we must, all of us, declare limits, so that at times it begins on the majority side, a shout is made and a reply is made, or a shout begins here and a reply is made. I really, owing to the fact that tomorrow we will have a Kamkunji, I really, Mr. Speaker, want to plead with you under this 1, 2, 3 that finally the decision rests with you, and want to plead with you, Mr. Speaker, having made a history with the temporary Speaker, Senate Deputy Speaker, on our experience which you went through, Mr. Speaker, that we placed a case for apology and sought forgiveness, and it was granted, and the goodness prevailed. I really want to plead with you that having that power rests with you, and having listened to us, to look at it in a way which will bring harmony to the House, and look at it in terms of prosperity. And the older members will engage with the new ones, so that matters like this do not arise again. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. Honorable Senators, I will have to conclude this matter. I believe that Senator Sifuna was thrown out of the House because of Standing Order 121, disorderly conduct. And I would at this point decline the Standing Order 123 raised by the Majority Whip. And I would just like to remind honorable senators that when we're in this House, apart from the standing orders that we have and the rules of this House that we have to follow, we all have to remember that we are individuals of different orientation, different mannerism, and different upbringing. The way you can conduct your conversation with one senator, you should not assume that another senator will accept certain ways of conversation. But at this point, having listened to every senator, the deliberation of this House, I have decided that Senator Sifuna will remain out of this House for the remainder of the day, and that matter is concluded. Thank you, Senators. Next order. Let me also remind Senators on the point of order that Senator Eddy had stood up on, that the Speaker has indicated that he will be coming back to the House to make, to communicate the message that he had gone out to write. So, Senators, please bear that in mind. Next order.
Order number 8, motion, adoption of the
Clerk, where are we? Proceed to the next order. Once you're done, I'll make my communication. As honorable senators have said, this matter should not affect the important business of the House, so it shall be communicated last. Proceed with the more important matters, please.
Order number 8, motion, adoption of the report of the Joint Committee of the National Assembly Departmental Committee on Environment, Forestry and Mining, and the Senate Standing Committee on Land, Environment and Natural Resources on the approval hearing for the nominees for appointment as members of the National Climate Change Council.
The chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the motion that the Senate adopts the report of the Joint Committee of the National Assembly Departmental Committee on Environment, Forestry and Mining and the Senate Standing Committee on Land, Environment and Natural Resources on the approval hearing of the nominees for the appointment as members of the National Climate Change Council laid on the table of the Senate Tuesday, 14th March 2023, and pursuant to Section 7(4) of the Climate Change Act and the Section 8 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act, approves the nomination of Ms. Emily Mwende Waita, Mr. John Kioli, and Professor George Odera Outa for appointment as members of the National Climate Change Council and rejects the nomination of Ms. Umra Omar. Mr. Speaker, sir, this report contains the proceedings of the National Assembly Departmental Committee on Environment, Forestry and Mining and the Senate Standing Committee on Land, Environment and Natural Resources during the approval hearing of Ms. Emily Mwende Mwaita, Mr. John Kioli, Ms. Umra Omar, and Professor George Odera Outa, nominees by His Excellency the President for the appointment as members of the Climate Change Council pursuant to Section 7(1) of the Climate Change Act number 11 of 2016. Mr. Speaker, sir, after receiving the message from His Excellency the President on the nomination of Ms. Emily Mwende Mwaita, Mr. John Kioli, Ms. Umra Omar, and Professor George Odera Outa to the National Climate Change Council, the Speaker of the National Assembly and the Speaker of the Senate on Tuesday, 14th February 2023, respectively issued a communication and directed the approval hearing for the nominees for appointment to the Climate Change Council be conducted jointly by both houses of Parliament as required by the Climate Change Act number 11 of 2016. Mr. Speaker, the names of the nominees and the curriculum vitae were referred by the Speaker of the National Assembly to the Departmental Committee on Environment, Forestry and Mining, and by the Speaker of the Senate to the Senate Standing Committee on Land, Environment and Natural Resources. The committee jointly held preliminary sittings on 7th March 2023 to prepare and consider